One day you're living life and not thinking twice about anything, and the next day you're fighting for everything that you once had. In today's episode, we'll dive into the importance of not taking things for granted and why the smallest of things deserve the most appreciation. Welcome into episode 5 of the Rolling With It podcast. Michael and Bailey with you. And if you haven't been here before, we're a disability podcast raising awareness and bringing a community to those who are disabled. And Bailey, we're going to talk about taking things for granted. So, why do people take things for granted?
I think people take things for granted because it is so easy. I'm very, very guilty of it. And I think for me, my issue with taking things for granted was that I didn't have the perspective that I have now to know what I was taking for granted. I think that until you really fully understand how much you can lose, you really don't grasp how many things you have that can be taken away. I think that we get very comfortable in our routines and they're very familiar, and we take comfort in that familiarity. And it's scary to think about not having that comfort. And I think that until you have the perspective of, I can really lose everything, you just don't confront that. So it's really, really easy to take things for granted.
And we've talked about different perspectives on this podcast. And, I was born with a disability, so I've lived with it my whole life. You have a different perspective of you became disabled. So, talking about taking things for granted, what were some of the things you did take for granted before you became disabled? And what kind of impact has it had on you now? Kind of realizing like, oh, I did take things for granted, and how has that kind of changed, I guess?
I think I will say that now I genuinely do not take anything for granted, because now I can look back and tell you every single thing that I did take for granted, and it is a mile long list. I think that I always heard, don't take things for granted. Like everybody hears that. You never know what's going to happen. Nothing's guaranteed. And so I think that I thought that I was really good at not taking things for granted, because I remember in college thinking like, this is something to be really grateful for. Not everybody gets to do this. Not everybody has the opportunity to do the things that I'm doing, to be able to compete their sport at this level. Like I really want to be grateful for this and see what I have. And I knew that those things could be taken away. Like I knew that, injuries take people out of their sports all the time. I knew that those were things that I could lose, and I was very careful to not take those for granted. Now that I am living with a disability and things are a lot harder, I can tell you every single thing that I did day to day that I didn't think twice about is something that I took for granted. So for me, it's every small thing. It's being able to get out of bed when my alarm goes off and not having to cater that around taking medications, and being able to stand up to brush my teeth, and being able to do everything without any help whatsoever. I think just so many things that I never even considered are the things that I really took for granted, because I didn't conceptualize that they could be taken away. I think I also just really took my comfort for granted because I was not living in constant pain. I live in constant pain now. That was something that I took for granted because I didn't realize that comfort was something that you could lose. So I definitely took that for granted. Just really everything that you don't even realize is it's huge. I think now I can honestly say I do not take anything for granted, because I had to fight so hard for my life that I view everything as something that I'm lucky to have or to be able to do, or even the things that I hate doing. I feel lucky to have to do them, because there was a point where I was very, very unsure if I was going to make it out at all. So even the things that really frustrate me and really I wish I didn't have to do, I still feel very grateful that I get to do them. I get to do the things that I hate having to do, because just, I don't want to take anything for granted again. I know that nothing is guaranteed. I know that I could still lose more again. Like, I don't think that I take anything for granted now, because I was at such a low, and I've had to kind of come face to face with the things that I did take for granted and know, like, oh, I actually took everything for granted. that sucks. Let's not ever do that again because that's not a fun realization, I don't think. I think anybody that ends up with a disability can probably tell you all the things that they took for granted that they never even realized were things that could be taken away. Michael, you obviously grew up with a disability. How do you think that's impacted your perspective on taking things for granted? Because you didn't have to, learn that so abruptly at a specific age. How do you think that's impacted your perspective on it?
I think it kind of makes it a little bit easier maybe for me to not like fall into that trap as much. I definitely am still guilty of it. That's Trust me, I'm definitely guilty of taking things for granted. Um, but I think just kind of growing up around other people with disabilities and growing up in that community, it's just like a frame of mindset. And I think that you can speak to it from, a, you know, gaining the disability later in life, but like you're kind of adapting that mindset now and like you live in that mindset. And I think for me, it's just the fact that I started that way. I have always been around people in wheelchairs and different disabilities, and it really is just the way that I think. It's the way that my brain is wired, and like for example, it challenges me because I've been in physical rehab in different places with hospital stays and surgeries and whatnot, and still to this day, I'm about to turn 25, and still to this day. I meet new people with disabilities or have had things happen to them that it does make me realize, like you said, you can always lose more because there are some days that, yeah, I think it's that I've lost everything. I think the world is ending some days. And there are just reminders in life that you can always lose more. There's Until you are lying in the ground 6 feet under, you can always lose more. And I always think back to one of my stays at Shirley Ryan Ability Lab because there is such a diverse population at that rehab center. There is bike accidents, diving accidents, spinal cord injuries, strokes, everything under the sun. And I remember just hearing stories of like, oh yeah, I used to be able to feed myself. And it really is the smallest of things. I absolutely agree with you. Like I those are the same things that I take for granted. If like when I do fall into that trap, it's always like I am having trouble feeding myself today. Well, guess what? I get to feed myself today. And I think that that's something that I really like that you brought up is I've also kind of adapted that mindset of I don't have to do this, I get to do this. Because I think, yes, there are human rights and we do have certain rights. I would argue that a lot of things that maybe people think are rights are actually privileges.
I was gonna say the exact same thing because I think you and I have talked about it a lot. I view everything as a privilege. Even the stuff that I absolutely just do not love to do, I view it as a privilege because it is a privilege to be alive. And I think until you've kind of gone through things like this, you don't really understand how much of a privilege it is to be alive. And it's just like it's a privilege to be not in a hospital, not fighting for your life, not going through all of that. And so for me, like a lot of times I'll be like, man, I have to eat these things for my health. Like, no, I get to eat these things for my health because there was a point where that was not an option. And just the things that like, man, I have to do this. Like, I get to do this. I get to take medications that allow me to live my life. I get to go to my infusions that allow me to have my autoimmune disease under control. Like everything is a privilege, even if it doesn't feel like it sometimes. Because I think it's really, really easy to be like, man, I have to do this. And I'm very guilty of that. But then a lot of times I kind of have like in the back of my mind, I have a little moment of like, no, like I get to do this. Like I am lucky to be able to do any of these things. And it's just, I think it is very, very easy to not view that, to view things as an obligation instead of a privilege. But to try to change your mindset a little bit and see things as a privilege because it really is. And I think it's something that people with disabilities and people who are around people with disabilities really understand that more because especially you've been around people with disabilities your entire life. You have seen so many different people with so many different disabilities, and you see just how much of a privilege it is to get to be able to, like you said, feed yourself or like be able to dress yourself or do any of your activities of daily living. It really is a privilege.
I've had experiences like talking about those smallest of things. Yes, I've had things that have been taken away permanently that I never got to experience in the first place. But just kind of adding on to that, like Shirley Ryan stuff, like in my recoveries, there were times that I could not even put my shirt on. And that's one of the things that I was like, oh, like, yeah, I can put my shirt on. Like, watch this. And then I went to go do it and I couldn't. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. I can't get myself dressed. Like, it's it's insane and it really is a privilege. And I think that's something that me and you have talked about outside of the podcast as well, which is something I really admire about you, is your idea of gratitude. Because you have talked about how just thankful you are for literally everything. Like, we'll be talking, and I'm like, you really do have a ton of gratitude. How did you kind of gain that mindset of gratitude, or where did that start, I guess, and how has it grown?
I will say not every day is full of gratitude. Don't let Michael fool you. I've got plenty of days that are full of complaints nonstop. But I think for me, it started because I did lose everything. And so slowly as I got through certain things and got certain things back and adapted certain things, I just kind of became a lot more grateful for it because I remember around this time last year, I had been in the hospital. I came home from being in the hospital and I could not pour the milk for my cereal. I was so weak. Like I couldn't do it. And one day, once I got some of my strength back, I could do it. And I'm like, man, like I'm so glad I don't have to ask somebody to pour this for me. Like I can eat cereal whenever I want to now. Like I am just so grateful for this. And I think that that's kind of how it grew because I did genuinely lose everything. And there was a point where I did not think I was making it through that. I don't think anybody in my family thought I was making it through that. And I think the honest answer for me is hitting rock bottom is what allows me to be grateful for the things that I have because I think even in moments where I'm frustrated, a lot of times I'm like, I am grateful that I am able to be frustrated about whatever this is because there was a point where I can't even imagine having been here or where I'm at now. I think that it's just been over time. I know, Michael, you know this. I have a book every single night that I write all of my prayers in. And so I can kind of go back and see what they were. And so I can flip through like the last few years. And there's times where I was just like, I was at my absolute lowest, like praying just for the pain to stop. And that was all I cared about because I was just so miserable. And then to kind of look at it now and look at where I'm at and for it to be like something with work or something that I get to do now and to just be able to look back and compare and see how far I've made it through that kind of forces me to be grateful because I'm like, wow, like all of these things that are stressing me out now, I'm grateful that I get to be stressed out by those because I can flip back to a year ago when I was, I didn't think I was going to make it through that. The harder things that I've been through are what have made me the most grateful because I almost like I had to fight so hard to be able to have anything. So I think it makes me really grateful to be able to do anything. Um, and I don't know, I think it kind of goes into taking things for granted because I've been at a point where I lost everything and could not do anything. Fully thought my life was over. I was like, if I make it through this, my life is over. Like that's it. And so to be at a point where I'm like, that's not what happened. Like I'm living, like it forces me to be grateful and it forces me to not take anything for granted because I know what it's like to have to fight for everything. And it just makes me appreciate things more. And it makes me not ever want to take anything for granted because I know that anything could happen. Like I could go through that again and have to deal with getting all my strength back and everything. And so yeah, I just don't ever want to take anything for granted. Like I want to choose to be grateful for the things that I have and that I worked really, really hard for and put all of my efforts into instead of focusing on the things that I don't have. Because it's also more fun to live in gratitude than whatever that feeling is.
Well, I mean, we've talked about and brung up the word perspective. Like it is the way that you choose to live also. Because I mean, we've all heard half glass full, half glass empty. It the
Yeah.
way that you choose to think about things can really make an impact as well. And I think you talked about, your little book that you have, and I'll kind of expand on that. I think that's one of the ways, and I'll ask you here in a minute, but one of the ways that I think that people can start to kind of ground themselves, so to speak, and kind of realize how much they actually do have and not take things for granted is writing down those things and having, we'll call it a gratitude journal.
Yeah.
And just every day, like when you're going to do something, try and stop and think, you know, are there people that can't do this? And I would I would bet a lot of money that on most of those things that the answer is yes, there's somebody that can't do them. And I think that that's if I had to give one tip for someone to work on not taking things for granted, I think it would be literally start going through your day and asking yourself while you're doing certain tasks, is there somebody that can't do this? And I think you will realize
The
that
answer is
there's,
always yes.
yeah, the answer
The answer is
will be
always
yes.
yes.
And I think
Yeah.
that that's very powerful. That could shift a lot of perspectives. So I think I don't know for you, but I would challenge you if you're going to take anything away from this episode, do that exercise. Ask yourself, is there somebody that can't do this? And if the answer is yes, be grateful that you can do it. What do you think? What would be your one exercise, I guess?
Ooh, I think there's two that work
Ooh,
for me. I
Bailey's
think
got two of them.
Bailey's got two of them. One of them I actually started like I started it years ago, like probably before I ended up with a disability. I have a note in my phone. I can go back all the different years of every single day. Like I don't remember how I started it. It goes back to 2019. I have a note in my phone for every single year, 2019, 2020, 20, all the way on, and it's bullet points of one good thing from every single day. No matter like how crappy the day was, I can go back every single year, and it just forces me to intentionally find one good thing. And like sometimes it's very simple. Like one of these is like, had Chick-fil-A. Like awesome. Probably wasn't my best day if that was the highlight of my day, but like it forces me to find one good thing in every single day because I think the good is where you look for it. There is always good. Sometimes you have to look really, really hard for it or like, kind of force things to be a good thing. But I think that that is something that really helps me be grateful because I think that it forces me to think like there's good where I look for it and there's things to be grateful for where I look for it and kind of forces you to be a little more intentional. And then the other one for me is my journal where I write all of my prayers every single night. Even if you're, not faith-based, just writing down something like where you're at. That way you can look back a year, 2 years, 3 years later and be like, whoa, like I have come so far because that forces you to be grateful to like look back at that and see how like genuinely desperate I was for just I was desperate. I didn't care about anything other than just like getting out of pain or just like making it through. Like I and to be able to just look at that versus like what I'm writing down now keeps me very humble and forces me to really, really be grateful for where I am right now. So I think those are my two things is just being intentional and writing down things because I can go back and I can look at all the years and I can look at all the things because I like to look back and be able to see how far I've come, the progress I've made, and also just I like to be intentional about it and I like to find the good and I like to, yeah, just effort, make an effort to be grateful and to practice gratitude because I think you can't be a grateful person if you're not practicing gratitude. You have to actually practice it and not just expect it to be, oh, I'm grateful. Because I think that's how you learn not to take things for granted is by practicing gratitude and practicing like realizing things, I guess.
You heard it here first, folks. Practice what you preach. Bailey Hunter 2026.
Thanks.
That will wrap up episode number 5. And remember to hit that subscribe button and come back for more on the Rolling With It podcast. And always keep rolling.